My name's Mike, and me, my wife, and my 3 kids live in a small house in New York City. I work in a factory that produces refrigerators. My wife, on the other hand, works at a local hospital as a nurse. Since the financial situation is so good for us right now, we have some extra spending money. There are so many opportunities for us to spend this money. First, we were thinking about putting our money into the stock market, but then we realized we should do something a little more luxurious and actually enjoy what we have. The only problem is there are just so many different things out right now. One of the most significant things to come out that I've heard of is the radio. Some of our friends have one and they say they love it. They say the best thing you could do is that you could do so much with it. First, obviously, you can listen to music. They say that there's this great new music called jazz coming out from Utah, and apparently it is great, and I've been dying to hear that. Also, they say that there are stations where I can listen to baseball. For example, the Yankees. I love the Yankees, and growing up, the only time I could ever watch the games is by going to them. Now it's great that I could actually enjoy the games from my home. Also, my 2 sons have been saying how much they want me to get a radio because they love Babe Ruth, as well as other people going around right now like Jim Dempsey and Jim Thorpe in basketball and also college sports. Speaking of college sports, my wife has also considered just saving them money because they want to care about our kids' futures. I don't know. I just think she doesn't want us to get the radio so I could take her to one of those new Broadway plays like America in Paris or Showboat or whatever. Well, clearly I have a lot of thinking to do about this.
Oh hey, didn't see you there. Now you may be wondering who I am, what I'm wearing, and what I'm doing with this. Well, let me tell you. In the 1920s, a new woman was born. She smoked, drank, danced, and voted. She cut her hair, wore makeup, and went to petting parties. She was giddy and took risks. She was a flapper. Now, the flappers did things that women, throughout the course of history, had never done before. During the war, the boys were fighting not only against the enemy, but they were also faced with death. The girls, on the other end, had bought into the patriotic fever and been aggressively entered the workforce. During the war, both the boys and the girls of this generation had broken out of society's structure, and they found it very difficult to return. The flapper's image consisted of a drastic, and to even some, shocking changes in women's clothing and hair. Flappers also started wearing makeup. Aside from the flapper attitude in 1920, women were given the right to vote, a drastic change from society. Not only did it provide them with the chance to be represented in politics, but it also brought them equal with men. The number of women working increased by 25%. The women held jobs such as teachers, typists, seamstresses, and nurses. Even when the men came back from war, women continued to stay in the workforce. The flapper's attitude was characterized by stark truthfulness, fast living, sexual behavior, and a zest for individuality and stature.
Oh, guess we're doing this now. Well, I'm here to talk about music in the 1920s. Of course, we have to start with one of the most important inventions of the 1920s pertaining to music, which is the phonograph, or as we know it, record player. The invention of the phonograph was very important in the 1920s, both economically and socially. Economically, because singers and musicians were now able to record their music and sell it to the American public. Socially, because now people didn't have to go out whenever they wanted to hear music and spend money. So not only was it a money saver, but the people were now able to communicate and share their ideas about different music and different styles with each other. Styles including swing, blues, and of course, jazz. Jazz was the most popular music at the time, not just taking America by storm, but the whole world by storm in the 1920s. Its faster step made Americans feel young and excited, and dance halls and opera houses around the globe were switching from orchestras to jazz bands, and were filling their theaters within hours of putting up tickets. Jazz also served as a form of entertainment in speakeasies around the country, as people who flocked for alcohol were able to also listen to great music that was new and exciting. Jazz also created new dance moves and ragtime bands. Of course, one can't talk about music in the 1920s without bringing up the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was a period in the 1920s where African American culture, particularly in the arts, flourished. During this time, we saw artists like Louis Armstrong rise in popularity in America for their interesting takes on the current music. Louis Armstrong gave us what we call improvisation, or just playing what you want and just getting on stage and doing whatever came to mind. Well, that's all the time I have, but I hope I was able to teach you a few things about music in the 1920s and its impact on the American people.
My name is Eugene Carlos, and today I will be taking you back to the 1920s. We will be looking at African Americans in a social setting. This will include the Great Migration, African Americans in the workplace, and the Harlem Renaissance. Jacob Besner, take your hands out from under the desk, please. First, let's begin with the Great Migration. Shortly after the commencement of the Industrial Revolution and Progressive Era, African Americans went on a pursuit for economic stability, social structure, and real-world conformity. This mass movement of millions of African Americans gave the U.S. the boost it needed for success in the following years. African Americans partook in major U.S. events such as World War I, the Harlem Renaissance, and the Civil Rights Movement. Many had moved into the Northeast looking for new opportunities. However, another large portion of African Americans remained in the South and lived as sharecroppers under the rule of their old masters. Now on to the Harlem Renaissance. This boom of music, arts, and literature allowed African Americans to bloom in their true nature and establish extremely notable precedents for future African American figures. First, we're going to begin talking about the Great Migration. The Great Migration was an exodus of African Americans to the Northeast. Now on to the Harlem Renaissance. This boom of music, arts, and literature allowed African Americans to bloom in their true natural.
If you do so much, I'll punch you in the face.
Alright, I'm not going to do it again.
Can I get a drink?
Yeah, sure.
The ratification of the 18th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which banned the manufacture, transportation, and sale of alcohol, ushered in a period in American history known as Prohibition. Prohibition was difficult to enforce, despite the passage of a companion legislation known as the Volstead Act. Despite very early signs of success, including a decline in arrests for over-intoxication and a reported 30% drop in alcohol consumption, those who wanted to keep drinking found ever more inventive ways to do so. The increase in the illegal production and sale of liquor, also known as bootlicking, and the proliferation of speakeasies, which were illegal drinking spots, led to a rise in gang violence. Chicago gangster Al Capone, who earned a staggering $60 million annually for bootleg operations and speakeasies, was notorious. In early 1933, Congress adopted a resolution proposing a 21st Amendment to the Constitution that would repeal the 18th. It was ratified by the end of that year, bringing the Prohibition era to a close.
Oh, hello there. Literature was a drastic social change during the 1920s. Stories were used to tell readers of the modernization and changes during the time period. Authors had mixed feelings of the changes in society. Some praised them, while others expressed their disappointment of the passing old ways. Prior to the creation of movies and the radio, people gained the knowledge of the wide world by books and magazines. Also, the Harlem Renaissance was mainly based on literature. This showed the changes of African American past life and the new life they were living in the cities. These authors looked to urge writers to examine the meaning of the African past. The Harlem Renaissance was a move to a higher change in educational values, mainly through their books. The Harlem Renaissance was a huge turn for African American art and literature because it grew interest to white readers and showed the credentials to others.
Hey, bartender, can you give this chocolate milk to the lady on the end? Tell her it's from me. Thanks. Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Alright, so thanks for meeting me at this speakeasy. Now let me tell you about how the civil liberties of many Americans have been attacked in recent years. First of all, as you probably remember, during the World War just a few years ago, our own democratic government took away some of our rights. For example, the Espionage and Sedition Acts violated our rights by making it illegal to criticize government leaders or the war effort itself. But this is a constitutional right of ours. It says so right in the First Amendment of the Constitution. And the government's justification is that our speech presents a clear and present danger. These loosely worded laws gave the government wide authority to prosecute many people unfairly during the war. And now, many different groups of people are having their rights taken away for other reasons. First of all, there's this guy, General Palmer, who's convinced that there's a conspiracy to overthrow the U.S. government. So he's ordering these unfair raids, in which thousands of suspected communists, socialists, and anarchists are being arrested. And these people are being deported without trial. I thought every American had the right to get a fair trial. Next, this whole communism scare is affecting labor unions unfairly because strikers are being labeled as communists. And as a result, these workers are being killed or injured in many cases. Lastly, the Ku Klux Klan is once again targeting blacks and especially immigrants. Even the government is limiting immigrants by establishing restrictive quotas. This isn't the America I know. Well, at least we got flappers.
Hey pal, what are you reading there?
Theory of evolution. You want to see?
Whoa, you're so lucky. He's reading, you see that, guys? He's reading The Theory of Evolution. Back in my day, the theory of evolution was banned from teaching in schools because of the Scopes trial. The Scopes trial, or as some people refer to it, the state of Tennessee versus John Scopes, or as others refer to it, the Scopes monkey trial, was a legal case in 1925 in which a substitute high school teacher, John Scopes, violated Tennessee's Butler Act. The Butler Act was passed so that evolution wouldn't be taught in schools. The trial was deliberately staged in order to attract money to the small town of Dayton, Tennessee. Scopes was found guilty and fined $100, or equivalent to $1,345 in today's money. But the verdict was overturned on a technicality and he ended up paying nothing. The trial served its purpose of drawing intense publicity to the town of Dayton, and there were two big-name lawyers to represent each side. The prosecutor, or the state, was represented by William Jennings Bryan, three-time presidential candidate. Can you think of any other three-time presidential candidates that didn't win? I think Henry Clay is one. Clarence Darrow was a famed defense attorney. He represented Scopes. The case was seen as both a theological contest regarding modernists and progressivists, and it ended up with the result that evolution should not be taught in schools.